Chapter 2. Blue Sky. "We cannot pay you," Blue Sky snapped as the woman who called herself Gilda started to unpack items strange and unfamiliar from the big black bag her maid held open. "Just as well I did not ask for payment then." "We don't need your help," Blue Sky tried again. At his remark, Gilda sighed in such a way that her full bosom heaved against the laced garments the woman of the town always wore. To Blue Sky's eyes, these clothes usually looked like just another cage the white people had built for themselves. But the way the material clasped Gilda's curves made it difficult to concentrate on making his usual distaste for her kind clear. She brushed away a blonde curl that had escaped her white cap and stared up at him. Her eyes were blue like his. In truth, not exactly like his. His were named after the summer sky, whereas hers were better named after the turquoise stone in a bracelet his mother had made for him when he was young. "Blue Sky," she breathed out his name in a soft, husky tone that squeezed at something inside. "Do you love your father?" He frowned down at her for a long moment before answering. "Of course." "Then let me try to save him." "Blue Sky, let her, please," his father groaned. Gilda turned back to the old man, put a hand on his cheek, and smiled. "Good, you're still with me." His father made an expression that if he hadn't been in so much pain would have been a smile. Blue Sky silenced at his father's request, but he had seen too much treachery from her kind to be so easily fooled. What trick was this woman playing in offering to heal his father? White people didn't heal his kind, they exploited them, attacked them, and slaughtered them. Or at least, they had before he had become his people's fiercest brave. From the moment he had been old enough to hold a bow, he had begun teaching white people it was best to leave his village alone. As such, save the likes of Lawson, most local settlers had learned to treat the Shawnee with cold disinterest. Even now the good people of the town had gone back to their business, uncaring that his father lay bleeding, likely dying, at the edge of the market square. Blue Sky wasn't surprised by their indifference. White people even slaughtered their own kind if they could find a reason to. When Gilda nursed his father, however, her manner was gentle, full of tenderness. Why? She did not know them. What did she gain from administering aid? "Bella, alcohol," Gilda instructed before inspecting the wound. Blue Sky, trying not to breathe in the intoxicating scent of freshly cut roses that seemed to emanate from her every pore, leaned over her so he could see how badly his father was hurt. "The wound is wide, but it's not too deep," Gilda said. "I've seen men come back from worse." Blue Sky didn't speak, but his frown deepened. He should have killed Lawson on the spot for this. He should have killed him for his ill treatment of women alone. When he had grabbed at Gilda's skirt, Blue Sky had almost grabbed Lawson's throat. That man was an animal, and Blue Sky intended to kill him like one. But he couldn't have his revenge now. Not when he and his injured father were outnumbered by their enemy, most of whom owned pistols. He would have to wait, but in good time he would spill Lawson's blood, the same way Lawson had spilled his father's. Arabella's green eyes were hard with concentration as she rooted through the bag and produced a bottle and a piece of material. Pouring some liquid onto the rag, Gilda said, "What is your name, sir?" "You would call me Great Hawk," Blue Sky's father replied. "Great Hawk," Gilda repeated, keeping her voice soft and holding up the now soaked rag. "This might hurt, but it's good. You understand?" "He understands," snapped Blue Sky. "He's been speaking English longer than you." Ignoring Blue Sky's comment, Gilda pressed the rag against the wound. Great Hawk winced and cried out in pain. Gilda took hold of his hand and squeezed it, giving the liquid a moment to work its magic before removing it. "Will you be wanting the needle, miss?" said Arabella. "I'm afraid so," Gilda said, accepting a needle and a thread from her maid. "What are you going to do with that?" asked Blue Sky. "Help me move him onto his side, will you?" Gilda responded with a tender smile that Blue Sky did not want to trust. After a few moments of hesitation, he decided he had little other choice and obliged. Great Hawk cried out again as Gilda started the first stitch. "I'm sorry," she said. On the 7th stitch, Great Hawk's body fell limp and his breath became shallow. "What have you done?" "He's fainted, that's all," said Arabella, placing both hands on her slender hips in what Blue Sky deemed a rather overconfident manner, given his father's lifeless form. "Happens to the best of us," she added, her voice a little quieter in response to his hardened stare. "It's probably better this way. He won't feel anything," Gilda assured him. Once she had finished the stitches, Gilda cut a long piece of linen from a roll she pulled out of her bag, and with Blue Sky's help she wrapped the fabric tight around Great Hawk's stomach, securing it with a pin. By the time they had finished, a diverting blush glowed in Gilda's cheeks from the effort it had taken. It was a dangerous detail Blue Sky was keen to disregard. Her face had turned the deep pink he imagined her whole body would be, after he'd laid her down in the grassy plains, her laces undone and her petticoats hitched high above her thighs. "How far is your home from here?" Gilda asked, mercifully interrupting his unwanted thoughts. "Why?" "Because he should not travel any farther than necessary in his condition." "Our village is not far north from here." Gilda nodded. "I will need to visit him to check on him and remove the stitches. I'm only in Virginia for 2 weeks, but that should be long enough to make sure he's healed." Blue Sky remained silent. A strange ache surfaced in his chest at the mention of her leaving so soon. He did not understand the white-hot pulse carving through him. He only knew he didn't want to experience it any more than he wanted her visiting the village. The Shawnee had learned to be careful about who they invited into their homes. In order to avoid giving her any sign that she would be welcomed by his people, he focused on lifting his father in his arms. He was about to walk away when some unidentifiable urge forced him to speak. "I suppose I owe you thanks," he ground out as Arabella started packing away Gilda's supplies. Gilda stood, dusted off her apron, and shook her head. "You owe me no thanks." "Why not?" "My reasons are my own," Gilda replied. "But in the short time I'm here, whatever aid I offer you or your people, you will owe me no thank you." Blue Sky looked at Gilda sidelong, sensing some kind of trap. Had she done something to Great Hawk? Something that would only speed his death? If not, why did she shun his gratitude? Great Hawk's eyes fluttered open as Blue Sky prepared to carry him away. "Wait," he said. Against his better judgment, Blue Sky obeyed and watched his father reach out a shaky hand and cup Gilda's face. "I will call you little son," he said to her, "because like the sun, you give life." Blue Sky could see tears in Gilda's eyes as she pressed her own hand against his father's, his sun-weathered skin so dark next to hers, whiter than the moon. "That's the first time in my life anyone has called me little," Gilda said. Arabella, who had finished tidying up, snickered. "I'd put 10 shillings on that, miss." Great Hawk again tried to smile. "Little son, it has more poetry than my given name." "Thank you," she added. Great Hawk fought for a moment to keep his eyes open, but again drifted into a blank sleep. "Blue Sky," Gilda whispered, keeping one eye on Great Hawk to be sure he couldn't hear her. "I've done all I know to do for your father, but he may not yet live. Keep him warm. If he even looks as though he might start a fever, call for me at once. I'm to reside on Queen Street. I have yet to see the property for myself, but it's owned by the widow Westerby, and I believe the house is yellow. Understood?" Blue Sky didn't respond. The son of a village chief did not take orders from a white woman, or any of their kind. "Understood?" she repeated, this time more sharply. Her manner had been so gentle up until this point that Blue Sky blinked in surprise. How could blue eyes have fire in them? It seemed impossible. Yet when he looked into hers, that was what he saw. He scowled as he caught himself wondering what could fuel such a fire in her. Blue Sky offered a stiff nod to acknowledge what she had said. He had no further time for quarrel. His father needed rest and the healing of his people. Turning his back on her, he stalked his way out of the market square, carrying his father towards their horse and willing himself not to look back in Gilda's direction, no matter how inviting a sight she may be. While checking his father was secure in the travois, Blue Sky tried to decide what kind of swindle Gilda had just played. Healing his father without payment or thanks must be part of some bigger plan. But what kind? Mounting his black horse and setting off back to the village, Blue Sky made a solemn promise that no matter what the obstacles, he would find out.